There's a name that seems woven into the very fabric of modern media, Oprah Winfrey. For decades, she's been the face of daytime television, a symbol of success, and a source of wisdom for millions worldwide. But beyond the glamorous facade and philanthropic spotlight, there is a side to Oprah few people have ever seen. Strange controversies, personal betrayals, shocking revelations that hint at battles far deeper than anyone might imagine. Did you know that her longtime partner, Stedman Graham, once alluded to some of her most closely guarded secrets? Today, we uncover the lesser-known chapters of Oprah Winfrey's life, the heartbreaks, the unsettling betrayals, and the secrets she's tried her best to keep hidden. Most of us know Oprah as a media mogul who rose from poverty to build a billion-dollar empire. We see her as a compassionate listener and a brilliant entrepreneur. But what if the path to that bright spotlight was lined with moments she'd rather forget? From her early struggles to the darkest betrayals within her own family, you're about to hear a story that's rarely told. Some of these revelations might change the way you see her forever. Long before the fame and fortune, Oprah Gail Winfrey was born into extreme poverty in rural Mississippi. According to what Stedman has shared in rare interviews, Oprah's early living conditions were shockingly harsh, far from the comfortable environment we might assume for a future icon. As a young child, she was sent to live with her grandmother, Hattie Mae Lee, because neither of Oprah's parents could provide consistent support. There was no running water, no electricity, and certainly no luxurious clothing. Instead, she wore dresses sewn out of potato sacks, each frayed edge a reminder of the scarcity they faced. Her grandmother's house was modest to the point of being threadbare. Every night was a struggle against the elements, and every morning required ingenious ways to survive. Yet, from this austere beginning sprang Oprah's first taste of education. Hattie Mae taught her to read at the age of 3, an astonishing achievement in a home that had so few resources. By the time Oprah could recite Bible verses and passages from storybooks, her curiosity was already blossoming. Many would later attribute her exceptional interviewing skills to these early lessons. But hardship doesn't just vanish once the day's chores are done. Disciplinary methods back then were severe. Oprah has recalled incidents where her grandmother whipped her for the smallest of mistakes. Even more haunting, she was told to stop crying and put a smile on your face during these punishments. Imagine the confusion of a child who's forced to endure physical pain, yet must present a cheerful facade. This emotional conflict laid the groundwork for what Oprah would later describe as her disease to please, the near-obsessive need to keep others happy, even if it meant sacrificing her own peace. By the time Oprah was old enough to leave her grandmother's care, her mother, Vernita Lee, stepped in, or at least she tried. The plan was for Oprah to live with her mother in Wisconsin. However, any hope of escaping hardship was quickly shattered. Racism reared its ugly head. Her mother's roommate made it clear that Oprah was unwelcome, and in one harrowing account, Oprah said she was forced to sleep outside. Those nights alone, filled with uncertainty and fear, showed her how the cruelty of others could shape a life. She held on, though, hoping things would get better. Instead, the situation worsened. Her mother eventually told her she couldn't stay in the house any longer. The desperation, the sense of abandonment, and the sting of rejection cut deep. Yet this was only the start of a string of painful events that would challenge Oprah's resilience in her formative years. But that wasn't even the worst of it, Stedman once hinted. And he was right. Because when Oprah looked for a place she could belong, she found even more heartbreak waiting. Oprah's teenage years brought a new slew of complications. She was sent to a juvenile detention home, but the facility was at capacity. It was as though the system itself had no room for her, no place for someone they labeled troubled. She was left in limbo, while her mother made it clear that she didn't want Oprah in the house during the waiting period. In a twist of fate, Oprah was sent to live with her father, Vernon Winfrey, in Tennessee. This move would turn out to be a major turning point in her life. Living with Vernon introduced her to a different environment altogether. For the first time in years, Oprah found the semblance of a stable household, structure, and someone who believed in her potential to excel. Yet, the emotional scars from her earlier years lingered. Having nearly been placed in a juvenile detention center, she must have felt the weight of near condemnation. Being cast aside by her mother was a wound that wouldn't heal easily. In Tennessee, she discovered that discipline could also be a force for good. It set boundaries, demanded hard work, and offered a second chance. During this period, Oprah's academic performance improved considerably. She was encouraged to speak at church, to read extensively, and to consider her future seriously. These changes might sound ordinary, but for a teenager who was moments away from a juvenile system, they were monumental. In interviews, Oprah has said that her father's rules and high expectations gave her direction she'd never had before. It was a turning point in her self-esteem, helping her realize she could aim for more in life than merely surviving day to day. But that was just the beginning, some closest to her would say, referencing the fact that a new chapter of heartbreak and betrayal was lurking around the corner. Because even though she'd found a steadier life in Tennessee, the battle scars from her youth would follow her well into adulthood. Most people don't realize just how personal and profound Oprah's losses were during her early adulthood. The biggest revelation? She had a child. When she was still in her teens, Oprah became pregnant, an event that would remain a closely guarded secret for years. Tragically, her son, whom she named Canaan, was born premature and passed away soon after his birth. She rarely speaks of this time, but Stedman, in one of his very few candid conversations, acknowledged that the emotional weight left an unshakable imprint on Oprah's psyche. If losing a child wasn't crushing enough, a relative added betrayal to the trauma. In 1990, Oprah discovered that this family member had sold the story of her secret pregnancy and child's death to the National Enquirer. For a mere $19,000, one of the most painful chapters of Oprah's life was plastered across tabloid pages for the world to consume. The sense of betrayal must have been immeasurable. Not only had she lost a son, but a person she trusted profited from her grief. In the years that followed, Oprah made the decision never to have more children. She's openly shared that her career demands would have made motherhood incredibly difficult, perhaps even detrimental for any child she brought into this world. "If I had kids, my kids would hate me," she once said, revealing how she believed her children would end up resenting her all-consuming schedule and constant public exposure. Yet, it's not just regret or sadness that emerges from this story. There's also a strong sense of self-awareness. Oprah knew the path she was on, knew the empire she was building, and recognized she couldn't be the mother she felt a child deserved. Some might question her choice, but it's worth noting that she made this decision from a place of deep honesty, molded by the tragedies and lessons of her past. But the heartbreak didn't stop there. This was just one form of betrayal she'd endure. Soon enough, even her budding career, which would eventually skyrocket her to fame, was racked by obstacles and humiliations. And each obstacle brought her face to face with the darker side of the industry she desperately wanted to conquer. We often think of Oprah's career in television as a straightforward climb from local news to global stardom. Reality, however, tells a different story. Early in her professional life, she scored a job at WJZ-TV in Baltimore, a chance to be a news anchor, which she initially viewed as the perfect role. But her emotional style of reporting, laughing and crying along with the stories she covered, clashed with the rigid expectations of hard news. A producer decided she was unfit for television news and pulled her off the air altogether. Imagine the blow this must have dealt to a young woman fighting to establish herself in a cutthroat industry. For Oprah, this wasn't just a standard setback. It was a moment of crisis. She'd moved to a new city, poured her heart into delivering stories with warmth and humanity, and was essentially told to tone it down or leave. That producer likely had no clue this same emotional authenticity would later become Oprah's hallmark. What would differentiate her from every other talk show host in history? But it wasn't just about her delivery style. Oprah has also spoken about the humiliating treatment she endured from some colleagues, particularly anchor Jerry Turner. She recounted how belittling the atmosphere felt, how every step she took seemed scrutinized or ridiculed. The combination of losing her anchor job and facing personal disrespect created an environment so hostile it nearly shattered her confidence. Yet, even this storm had a silver lining. After being removed from the anchor chair, Oprah was assigned to host a daytime show called People Are Talking. This was a departure from the strict, impersonal news format that had stifled her empathy. On this show, Oprah discovered that her emotionality, once considered a liability, was in fact her greatest asset. She could connect with guests in a way no one else could. She listened, responded, and empathized, forging a bond with viewers that hard news had never allowed. But that was far from the only challenge, as Stedman later pointed out. Yes, the professional victories were piling up, but behind closed doors, Oprah would experience an entirely different kind of anguish, confrontations with racism that would disturb anyone who believed success could shield them from prejudice. Despite rising fame and a swelling bank account, Oprah was reminded time and again that discrimination knows no bounds. One notorious incident took place in Zurich, Switzerland. Oprah was there for Tina Turner's wedding and decided to pop into a high-end boutique. She spotted a $40,000 handbag that caught her eye, but when she asked to see it, the saleswoman flatly refused, implying it was too expensive. Oprah asked again. Same response. And again, only to be told no for the third time. Consider who Oprah Winfrey is, a billionaire, a global celebrity, and someone who could easily afford that bag if she wanted it. Yet, the clerk's biased assumption that she couldn't or shouldn't buy it underscores just how deeply prejudice can run. Oprah could have made a scene, pulling out a limitless credit card, but she chose to walk away instead. Her calm response, as she later said, was meant to show that even the wealthy are not insulated from racial bias. Then there was the time she was in New York, fresh from enjoying a Broadway show. She noticed a cozy sweater in a store window on Madison Avenue. Eager to try it on, Oprah and a friend walked to the entrance, only to find the doors locked, even though it was normal business hours. Thinking it might be a misunderstanding, Oprah crossed the street to a payphone, this was years ago, and called the store. "Are you open?" she asked. "Yes, come on in," they replied. Yet when she returned, the doors remained locked to her and her friend, while two white women were allowed in just moments later. When Oprah called the store afterward to complain, management admitted they'd refused entry because two black people had robbed the store a week earlier. They even offered her the sweater for free to make amends. Oprah's answer was swift: keep the sweater. The insult was more than a garment could fix. In that moment, she wanted to send a message. No one's money or fame should ever excuse prejudice. For someone who already battled so many personal demons, each of these moments felt like an added wound. Stedman, who has been by her side for decades, saw firsthand how these experiences weighed her down. Despite her wealth and philanthropic deeds, Oprah wasn't immune to the sting of racism, and no amount of success could fully shield her. Yet, even these moments weren't the most painful chapters in Oprah's life. For that, we must turn to the dangerous territory of addiction and a relationship so toxic that it nearly cost her everything. One of the most startling moments in Oprah Winfrey's public life arrived during a 1995 episode of her show, focusing on drug recovery. In a raw confession, Oprah admitted that years earlier, in her 20s, she had used cocaine. The audience went silent. Few expected the queen of daytime television, perched atop her empire of advice and human interest stories, to reveal such a vulnerability. She spoke through tears, explaining that her relationship with the substance was inseparable from a turbulent romance she'd been in at the time. She was, in her own words, more addicted to the boyfriend than to the cocaine. Implying her emotional dependence on this individual drew her into a lifestyle that involved substance misuse. It wasn't that she couldn't stop using. It was that she couldn't tear herself away from a destructive relationship. When that romance ended, her cocaine use ended as well, an abrupt stop that suggests how deeply the drug was tied to this specific chapter of her life. Some in the audience cried that day, startled to see the normally composed Oprah with tears streaming down her face. Friends and viewers alike were floored by her honesty. How many talk show hosts would have hidden that story forever? But for Oprah, it was about exposing a wound so that others might heal too. Looking back, it's astounding that this revelation didn't derail her career. Instead, it became a turning point. Viewers appreciated her transparency, and many people struggling with their own dependencies found new hope. To this day, that episode remains one of the most talked about moments in talk show history. And yet, the layers of hidden pain in Oprah's life didn't end with heartbreak or substance misuse. The deepest cuts often came from those she once called family. Fame can be both a blessing and a curse. Oprah learned this the hardest way possible when the very people she expected to keep her confidences, her own family, sold her secrets to the tabloids. One of the most glaring betrayals came from her half-sister, Patricia Lloyd. Patricia was just 43 when she passed away under circumstances that remain unclear to this day. Early reports suggested potential drug involvement, but nothing was ever confirmed with absolute certainty. Despite the murky details surrounding her death, what's certain is the tension and heartbreak that existed between Patricia and Oprah while Patricia was still alive. Patricia had once gone to a magazine in 1990, selling details about Oprah's private life, what Oprah later referred to as her hidden shame, for around $19,000. This included information about Oprah's teenage pregnancy, among other personal stories. The devastation Oprah felt was immeasurable. It wasn't just about money. It was about trust. Trust that had been shattered in exchange for tabloid headlines. The betrayal cut even deeper considering Oprah had already lost her half-brother Jeffrey to AIDS in 1989. One sibling gone, another selling her secrets. The accumulation of grief and betrayal was like a never-ending storm. Yet, the family betrayals didn't stop there. Oprah's father, Vernon Winfrey, also delivered a shocking blow. In 2007, the New York Daily News reported that Vernon planned to release a tell-all book about Oprah. At first, she refused to believe it. When her assistant told her about the query from the press, Oprah insisted it must be a rumor. After all, how could her own father publish her personal life for strangers to read? But when Oprah asked Vernon directly, he confirmed the plan. "I meant to tell you I've been working on it," he said. She was stunned. This wasn't just about disclosing childhood stories. It was the sense that even her father, the one who had once taken her in when no one else could, was capitalizing on her fame. It hurt, badly. Oprah said she was upset and stunned, though she refrained from calling it devastating in public. But how could it not be? For most people, a father-daughter relationship is supposed to be a wellspring of support. Instead, Oprah found out the hard way that fame sometimes warps family bonds. Even Stedman, unwavering in his loyalty, couldn't shield her from the disappointment or erase the damage caused by those she once trusted. And so, you might wonder how a woman who has faced unimaginable betrayals, heartbreaks, and humiliations could still stand tall, still influence millions with her words and philanthropic projects. The answer lies in Oprah's decision to transform adversity into advocacy, to spin betrayal into empathy, and to turn heartbreak into an unbreakable resolve. When we think of Oprah Winfrey, we often conjure images of a generous philanthropist, a trailblazing talk show host, and one of the most influential women in the world. But behind the scenes, her life has been punctuated by devastating losses, punishing betrayals, and relentless challenges. From the cramped quarters of her grandmother's Mississippi home to the glitzy red carpets of Hollywood, Oprah's journey is anything but simple. She survived a childhood of extreme poverty and harsh discipline that shaped her views on empathy and forgiveness. She endured abandonment from her mother, overcame the near brush with juvenile detention, and turned life around under her father's strict guidance in Tennessee. She lost her only child, only to have a family member profit from her secret heartbreak. Then came the rejections on live television, humiliations by senior colleagues, and very public incidents of racism that showed her that no success truly protects anyone from prejudice. Through it all, she discovered her unique ability to empathize with others, a gift she once thought was a curse, and built a media empire on the power of human connection. And still, the betrayals kept coming, from a half-sister selling her secrets to a father planning a tell-all. Oprah's story reminds us that no amount of money, fame, or influence can completely shield you from pain. It's a testament to the resilience of someone who has chosen to rise above her own tragedies and keep moving forward. So, what do Stedman's rare revelations tell us about Oprah Winfrey? Perhaps they reveal that behind every success story, there's a vulnerable human being who has fought unimaginable battles to stand where they stand. Maybe these revelations challenge us to see her not just as a billionaire mogul, but as a person who, at every stage, faced heartbreak head-on. And maybe they leave us wondering, if Oprah, who seems to have it all, can endure this much pain and still stand tall, what does it say about the rest of us? Her life is a tapestry of deep sorrow and incredible triumph, a constant reminder that even our darkest secrets and hardest struggles can pave the way for extraordinary achievements. In the end, the question isn't whether Oprah can bounce back. She's already proven that time and again. The real question is how these revelations alter our own perspective. After hearing the betrayals she's overcome and the hardships she has weathered, do we gain a deeper respect for her perseverance? Or do we see, perhaps for the first time, that even icons are made of flesh and blood, scarred by a world that doesn't always reward kindness or vulnerability? No matter what your opinion is, one truth stands out. Oprah Winfrey's life isn't a fairy tale where success magically erases suffering. It's a living story of resilience, exposing how complicated and fragile we all can be. And now that you know the secrets she's tried so hard to protect, maybe you'll see her accomplishments in a new light. Maybe you'll realize that every success comes with a price, and sometimes that price is heartbreak beyond imagination. Thank you for joining this deep dive into Oprah Winfrey's lesser-known struggles. Whether you're inspired or unsettled, remember that each story has layers most will never see. Feel free to share your thoughts. How do these revelations change how you view Oprah Winfrey? After all, her story is still being written, and the next chapter might just be as unbelievable as the last.